Why is our mind still restless, even in moments of silence? This question may seem simple, but it touches the deepest layers of our being. Have you ever sat alone in a quiet room, no noise, no tasks? No one calling your name, yet your mind continued to race. Thoughts swirling like a storm, memories surfacing, worries about the future, regrets from the past, all rising and falling endlessly. The truth is, tension doesn't come from the outside world. It arises from the silent, constant conversation within us, a dialogue we rarely take the time to hear. In a world that never stops talking. We live in a time where everything moves fast. New headlines every minute. Social media flooding our screens with images, opinions, and expectations. We think we need more knowledge. More strategies, more control. But in reality, what we truly need is less noise, fewer thoughts, more clarity. Have you ever noticed that the more you try to become someone, the more exhausted you feel? That the more you seek perfection, the more you lose touch with your own wholeness? Peace doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from returning to less, from seeing what is already here, beneath all the noise. This video is not here to teach you something new. It won't tell you how to become someone else. It won't ask you to stay positive or fix yourself. It won't offer miracle formulas or spiritual shortcuts. Because your mind is not a machine to be optimized. And pain is not something to be erased with quick solutions. What this video offers is a space, quiet, simple, and deep. A place where you can pause. A place where you may finally hear your own presence again. This is not about adding anything. It's about remembering what has always been within you. This is a space to rest, not to escape, but to return. When you listen to a Zen story, you're not just listening with your ears. You're listening with your whole awareness. When you hear a Buddhist teaching, it's not something to memorize. It's something to absorb, breathe in, live through. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're healing. Maybe you're searching. Or maybe, you just long for a moment of quiet truth. Whatever brings you here, know that you are welcome, just as you are. There is nothing to fix. Nothing to force. If your mind is looking for a place to rest, then don't click away. Don't open another tab. Don't rush to fill the silence with more content. Just sit. Breathe. Let go. Let the stories and teachings in this video speak to something deeper than thought, something only silence can understand. If your mind is seeking a place to rest, stay here with us. This isn't a pitch to subscribe. It's a quiet invitation. If this space brings you a little more stillness, a little more softness, then perhaps we've met at the right moment. We can't promise transformation, but we can offer company. For the next 3 hours, and maybe, for much longer. In Zen, stories are not meant to be consumed like entertainment. They are echoes of silence, designed not to inform the mind, but to awaken the heart. The tales that follow are not well known, nor are they easy to explain. And perhaps that is their power. Let these stories unfold slowly. Don't rush them. Let them settle into your breath, your spine, your quiet moments. They may not change your life, but they might remind you of what life truly is. 1. The torn robe and the king. It's not the appearance, but the seeing. A powerful king once sought out a reclusive Zen master, curious about the wisdom that lived beyond palace walls. When the monk arrived, he was barefoot and draped in a robe so worn it barely clung to his frame. The royal court laughed. The king frowned. Is this the great master I've heard so much about? The Zen monk looked at the king with soft eyes. He pulled from his bag a small bronze mirror, aged and cracked. He held it up and said, "When your majesty looks into this mirror, does it reflect your crown, or your face?" The king hesitated. The monk continued, "Your clothes say you are a king. My robe says I am poor. But a mirror does not care for robes or crowns. It only shows what is. That night, the king dismissed his courtiers and sat alone in his chamber, robe removed, crown set aside, wondering, for the first time, who he was without them. 2. The stone wall of Master Dogen, letting the ego crumble in silence. When a young monk came to Master Dogen's monastery in the mountains of Japan, eager to learn the Dharma, Dogen did not preach. He said nothing. He simply walked with the young man around the grounds, until they came to a long, moss-covered stone wall. The master pointed to it and said, "This is your first lesson." The student frowned, confused. "But master, it's just a wall." Dogen nodded. "Exactly. It does not boast. It does not ask to be seen. It endures wind, rain, time, and never once tries to explain itself. It simply remains." He touched the cold stone gently and said, "You came here with thoughts to protect. Let them weather like this wall. Then, perhaps, you will understand Zen." The student bowed deeply, and from that day forward, he learned by watching what did not speak. 3. The man who chose a life of silence, when wisdom no longer needs words. In a quiet village, there lived an old man who never spoke. Children said he was mute. Adults called him mad. But anyone who met his gaze felt strangely at peace. One day, a proud scholar passed through and heard about him. Laughing, he said, "What kind of wisdom hides in silence?" He approached the old man and challenged him. "If you have something to teach, then speak." The old man simply looked at him. Then placed his hand on his own chest, and gently touched the scholar's heart. The scholar stood motionless. He did not know why, but tears began to fall. Years later, after becoming a monk, he would write, "Words taught me how to argue. Silence taught me how to see." 4. The Zen Master and the Temple Bell, awakening in the final echo. Every morning, the bell rang through the Zen temple, low, deep, and long. But one novice found the sound unbearable. "The bell stirs agitation in me," he confessed to the master. "It pulls me away from stillness." The master smiled and handed him the striker. "Then tomorrow, you shall ring it." The novice struck the bell. The sound bloomed and spread, fading into soft echoes, then into nothing. The master asked, "Did you hear the final sound?" "Yes," the student replied. It disappeared into silence. The master leaned in and whispered, "So will your thoughts. So will your name. So will the self you cling to. That silence is your true nature. Let the bell remind you." From that day, the novice never heard the bell the same way again. It no longer disrupted his peace. It became part of it. 5. The gaze of the young novice, children see what adults forget. One rainy afternoon, a Zen master sat under the eaves, watching raindrops slide from leaf to stone. A young novice walked by and asked, "Why do you stare at the rain so long, master?" The master smiled. "Why don't you?" The child replied with the simplicity only a child can summon. "Because rain is just rain. You look at it, then you move on." The master chuckled softly. That night, during the evening sitting, he shared this story. "When we were children, we saw things as they were. No metaphor, no philosophy, just truth in its bare form. Then we grew up. We turned rain into sadness. We made clouds mean loneliness. We began to think instead of see." He closed his eyes and said, "Perhaps the child was the master all along. Let the silence between these words speak louder than the stories themselves. Let the stillness you feel now be the true teaching. The robe, the wall, the old man, the bell, the child. They are all pointing to something beyond the story. Something already alive in you. You don't need to understand. You only need to remember. You don't need to climb a mountain. You only need to sit where you are. You don't need to search for peace. You only need to stop chasing everything else. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that what you've been seeking was never lost. In this modern world, we often turn to Buddhist teachings as a refuge for the mind overwhelmed by pressure and noise. Yet the more we seek, the more confused we sometimes become. Could it be that we're trying to grasp with the mind something that was never meant to be understood by the intellect? Zen doesn't teach us something new. It simply reminds us of what we've forgotten within. Everything we need is already here. We just became too busy chasing the world outside to notice. The Buddha is not a form to be worshipped. The Dharma is not a doctrine to be memorized. The way is not a path to be followed, it is a way of being, step by step. Zen doesn't tell us to sit still and escape the world. It invites us to be fully in the world, without being entangled by it. In this way, every Buddhist teaching becomes not a phrase to quote, but a way to live. Take Wu Wei, for example. Often misunderstood as passivity, it is actually the art of effortless action, of doing without forcing. Like a stream flowing down the mountain, it doesn't strain to move. Yet it reaches where it must. When we stop interfering, stop trying to control everything with our personal will, life begins to unfold naturally. Even adversity no longer feels like opposition. Stillness, in Zen, is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of inner resistance. One may live alone in the mountains yet be full of noise inside. Another may dwell in the city and remain calm like a silent pond. Stillness happens when we stop fighting what is. When we let the wind blow and the clouds pass without needing anything to be different. Letting go, too, is often feared. Many think it means losing everything. But letting go in Zen is not about abandoning. It is about staying, more deeply, more freely. You still care for your children, still dedicate yourself to your work. But you are no longer possessed by fear or grasping. You love without clinging. And that love becomes more spacious, more real. Pain is not something to avoid, but something to understand. When you try to escape suffering, you turn away from a part of the truth. Only by sitting with it, breathing through it, do you begin to see what it's made of. And from there, compassion is born, not just for others, but for yourself. Mindfulness, as seen through Zen, is not a technique. It is a way of being. A full presence in each gesture, each breath, each look. When you wash a dish, you are just washing the dish, not thinking about emails or tomorrow's plans. When you eat, you are aware of eating. When you sit beside someone you love, you are fully there, not just in body, but in soul. Life becomes simple, but not shallow. Eventually, you begin to see that the self you've been protecting is not real. It's a shadow made of memories, wounds, desires, and fear. The more you try to hold on to it, the more it slips away. Seeing this, you don't need to become egoless. You simply stop believing you are someone fixed. You become light, fluid, free. Many ask, what is enlightenment? Is it some magical moment where suffering disappears? No. Enlightenment is not an event. It is every time you catch yourself lost and gently return. It's when you are angry, and you see it. When you stop running toward the past or future and simply remain with what is. Each moment like this is a step on the path. No one needs to approve. No one needs to witness. And then, you begin to listen. Not to reply, not to argue, but to truly be with the other. When you listen with silence inside, you offer the rarest gift of all, the feeling of being seen. In that moment, you are no longer the listener. You become space itself, where another person can simply be. Zen teachings may seem paradoxical on the surface. They don't lead you anywhere. They simply invite you home, to yourself. Not the self you think you are, but the silent presence beneath name and form. There is no one to become enlightened. No seeker. No goal. Just life, breathing, seeing, loving. If you've come far enough to realize that answers don't lie out there, then maybe, you are ready to live without needing answers at all. Just live. Deeply. Slowly. Let the simple things teach you what no scripture ever could. There are times when we believe that mindfulness is something lofty, something to be learned through books or reached by retreating from the world. But mindful living does not require you to escape life, it simply asks you to return to it, with new eyes, and with a heart that is present. To sit down is not just to practice meditation. It is an act of courage, to pause and truly look within. How long has it been since you truly listened to yourself? To the unspoken wounds, the silent cravings. The patterns that keep replaying beneath your awareness. When you sit, not to fix, not to perform, but simply to be present, something begins to settle. The knots inside you slowly loosen on their own. You don't need to disappear into the mountains to meditate. You can practice right in the midst of daily life. When you walk a little more slowly through the crowded market. When you look at someone without defensiveness in your eyes. When you wash a dish without thinking about yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's plans. In these small and ordinary moments, mindfulness begins to bloom, not as a technique, but as a way of living. In a world that moves so fast, to pause and take a single deep breath is an act of quiet revolution. Most of us breathe as if life is chasing us. But when we stop, just to breathe, we return to something simple, something sacred. The breath becomes a bridge that carries us back from the chaos of thought to the calm of being. Many seek peace by trying to control everything, their careers, relationships, emotions, future. But the truth is, peace doesn't come from mastering life. It comes from not being mastered by your inner reactions. When someone yells at you, you have two choices. To react like always, with anger or fear, or to simply sit with the discomfort and see that it isn't who you are. It's just a passing wave. And when you don't cling to it, it dissolves. And you are still here, quiet, open, untouched. To live mindfully is not to live perfectly. It is to live honestly. To face the shadows within without turning away. To say, "I'm sorry," when you're wrong, and to stay silent when words would only clutter the truth. To look at another human being and see past the labels and expectations, to meet them where they are. As they are. And to meet yourself in the same way. A mindful life is not always an easy life. But it is a true one. Slowly, you begin to rediscover beauty in the smallest of things. Sunlight filtering through leaves, the sound of birds in the morning, or a single drop of water resting on a trembling leaf. You see that you don't need to change anything grand. You only need to change how you show up for this life, and that changes everything. You don't need to wait for life to be peaceful before you begin to live mindfully. It is your mindfulness that will make life more peaceful. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to return to who you already are, nothing added, nothing taken away. And from that place, life will begin to unfold its quiet, sacred beauty. Return like a river. There are journeys that require no departure, because the destination has always been right where you are. Meditation is not a path to run towards something. It is the art of stopping, and realizing you never truly left. You don't need to be a monk to live fully. You don't need to shave your head or wear robes to touch something sacred. All it takes is to live one single day with full presence, in each breath, each step, each glance. When you wash a cup as if it were the first and last time, you are practicing meditation. When you listen to someone without interrupting, without judging, you are already walking the way. When you feel sadness not as a threat, but as a visitor, you are opening the gate of the heart. Life doesn't ask you to be extraordinary. It only asks that you be present. Not to fix yourself. Not to become better, but simply to see more clearly. Like a river, You don't need to force your flow. Just move in the direction you are meant to move. And in that movement, there is grace. Awakening is not some distant state. It happens when you eat a meal without scrolling your phone. When you hear the rain and don't immediately think about traffic or plans. When you breathe, not to control life, but to return to it. Mindfulness is so simple that we often overlook it. But once you taste its quiet sweetness, you'll never want to live distracted again. You don't have to retreat from the world to find peace. Peace isn't hiding in a mountain cave, it's in the way you speak gently to a child, or the moment you forgive yourself. Maybe you once thought peace was something to attain. But peace has always been here, waiting for you to return. When you look back at your life, it's not the mistakes you'll regret most. It's the moments you weren't truly there. The afternoon you rushed through. The conversation you only half heard. The days you called living, but lived like a machine. But you don't have to continue that way. Right now, at this very moment, you can stop. Just breathe. Breathe as if it were your last breath. Breathe as if you remembered how sacred it is to be alive. In that one breath, you've already begun to return. Peace doesn't arrive from outside. It's not found in praise, or money, or milestones. It begins the moment you sit down and realize, I am already enough. Even if the circumstances are imperfect. Even if you're still learning how to forgive, how to heal, how to let go. You are already worthy of peace. You don't need a temple to practice meditation. You don't need spiritual clothing to begin. All you need is an honest heart, a soul that doesn't hide, and the courage to meet yourself as you are. And then, slowly, day by day, you'll stop chasing peace, because you are peace. If you've stayed with this video to the end, you don't need to write anything. Just leave a single period. In the comments. Not for us, but for you. It's your quiet way of saying, I am here. You don't need to be a monk. Just live one day, deeply and truthfully, and that alone is meditation. And if this space has brought you even a moment of rest or clarity, feel free to stay. Breathe with us. Walk with us. Be with us. One mindful step at a time, through the world, just as it is.